to look at issues specific to victims in the workplace.
Bob Blackman.
Will the Minister update the House on what changes, if any, she intends to make to the Equality Act 2010, and in particular, if she is going to make caste a protected characteristic, will she ensure that people of all religions that emanate from the Indian subcontinent are consulted, because this will severely impact every single family in this country?
Mr Speaker, we have no plans to change the Equality Act, as my honourable friend set out earlier through the new race engagement group being led by Baroness Lawrence. We will consider any such questions, such as the ones that he identifies.
Melody Dion.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. After an appalling rape incident on the Fuller Street Bridge in my constituency, I was shocked to find that last year only 2.7% of recorded rapes in the UK resulted in a charge. What is the Minister doing to improve this charge rate and get justice for more survivors of this appalling crime?
I'm very sorry to hear of the case in my honourable friend's constituency, and it brings into sharp focus the need to tackle violence against women and girls and to ensure that our mission to halve violence against women and girls is delivered. The inheritance that we had from the Conservatives was shocking. Far too many women denied justice, cases never getting to court, or victims being left to wait for years for justice. That's why the Lord Chancellor has made this a priority to take action to deliver justice for women.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, can I welcome in the gallery the Chairman of the State of the Great Hurl, the Parliament of Mongolia. Now we come to Alberto Costa. Prime Minister's questions.
Question number 1, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last night I spoke to President Zelensky to discuss progress that President Trump had made with Russia towards a ceasefire, and I took the opportunity to reaffirm our unwavering support to the people of Ukraine. Mr Speaker, I'm deeply concerned about the resumption of Israeli military action in Gaza. The images of parents carrying their children, young children, to hospitals have emerged over the last few days are truly shocking, alongside the sheer number of people who've been killed. And we will do all that we can to ensure the resumption of the ceasefire, to get the remaining hostages out and to get aid that's desperately needed in. Mr Speaker, the whole House will want to celebrate the extraordinary life of Group Captain John Paddy Hemingway, the last known pilot of the Battle of Britain. The courage of his generation, the fearlessness, sense of duty and service secured our freedom, and we will never forget them. Mr Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Alberto Costa.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Brain tumours kill more children and those under the age of 40 than any other cancer. Mr Speaker, from time to time, all of us get constituents in our surgeries that tell us stories which really get to us and twang on the heart. Mr Speaker, last Friday, Laura attended my Sharnford constituency. She told me of the tragic death of her 6-year-old, energetic, loving son, Talon, from a brain tumour. All that she asked, Mr Speaker, is that I raise this matter nationally, and I'm doing that now. But I'd like to go one step further. Would the Prime Minister agree to arrange a meeting for Laura and the brain tumour support group known as Angel Mums to meet with the relevant Healthcare Minister to discuss brain tumour research?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for doing what he was asked to do, which is raising this case here. The loss of a child is simply unbearable, and I think most of us, including myself, simply wouldn't know how we would be able to react. And I think the whole House will want to send its deepest condolences to Laura and to all of Talon's family and friends. I will happily make sure that the meeting that he requests takes place, so we can reassure that we are committed to supporting life-saving and life-improving research, and doing all we can to improve how we prevent, detect, manage and treat cancer. Thank you.
Andrew Peck.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Like many people in Peterborough, I am passionate about tackling low pay and insecure work, especially for young people. Next month, many of my constituents will receive a welcome boost in their pay packets due to the increase in the national minimum wage. Can I thank the Prime Minister for ignoring the voices on the opposite benches who continue to oppose our plans to make work pay? And can I urge him to go further and faster in delivering our plan for change for working people?
Well, I thank him. He's a superb job for Peterborough, and we're proud that our Employment Rights Bill is tackling the cost of insecure work, and we're delivering that pay rise for 3 million of the lowest paid. We know the Leader of the Opposition opposes all that. She thinks the minimum wage is a burden and that maternity pay is excessive. It's the same old Tories. They opposed the minimum wage in the first place. They've learned absolutely nothing.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor claimed that her budget was a once-in-a-Parliament reset. So why are we having an emergency budget next week?
Mr. Speaker, we have delivered record investment into this country. We've had 3 interest rates cut in a row, and wages are going up faster than prices, which is a massive cost of living boost. That's after only 8 months, after 14 years of absolute failure. What do they do? Interest rates 11%. Massive 22 million black hole in the economy. They crashed the economy. We're rebuilding Britain.
Mr. Speaker, he knows why we're having an emergency budget, because since the last one, since the Chancellor delivered her budget in October, growth is down, borrowing is up, and she has destroyed business confidence. Does the Prime Minister now regret raising taxes on business?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the OBR will present their numbers. There'll be a spring statement next week. But, Mr. Speaker, she still hasn't. We've got record investment into this country. Interest rates have been cut, and she talks about national insurance. We had to fill the 22 billion black hole that lay there. We've invested in the NHS, in schools and public services. We're pressing on with planning, with infrastructure and regulation. But I understand the Leader of the Opposition is straight talking, so perhaps she can help us with this. Is she going to reverse the next increase? If not, what's the point? If so, what other taxes is she raising to fill the hole? One way or the other?
You're in government.
Speaker, the only black hole is the one that he is digging. He's shown absolutely no regret, but everybody knows the Chancellor has made a mistake. That is why they're having an emergency budget. Later today, Conservatives will vote to exempt hospices, pharmacies and care providers from her national insurance rise. Will he, at the very least, support exempting these vulnerable services from his jobs tax?
Prime Minister.
I noticed she didn't say they're going to reverse the national insurance rises. It's exactly what she wants all the benefits, but they can't say how they're going to pay them. She carps from the sideline, but can't make her mind up whether she supports or doesn't support national insurance rises. We've made provision for hospices, we've made provisions for charities, but we had to secure the economy. We had to fill the £22 billion black hole that they disgracefully left.
Mr. Speaker, he hasn't made these provisions. He keeps talking about budget benefits. Unemployment is not a benefit. Businesses closing are not benefits. I asked him whether he would exempt hospices, even children's hospices, from the jobs tax. He did not answer that question. His MPs know that this could affect end-of-life care. So I will ask the same question again. Will he exempt hospices from paying his jobs tax?
Mr. Speaker, we've already invested £100 million for adult and children's hospices, an additional £26 million in funding through the Children's Hospices grant, but we can't get away with what we were doing in that budget, the root cause, which was fixing the economy they left so badly damaged, a £22 billion black hole. Perhaps you start the next question with an apology.
Mr. Speaker, I remember when he made... They want me to answer questions, then we can swap sides. I remember when he made that announcement. He's forgotten, because the money he's referring to for hospices is for buildings. It is not for the salaries hit by the jobs tax. As St Helena Hospice in Colchester said, we cannot use this funding for salaries, which is where we need urgent help. Why is the Prime Minister not listening to hospices?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've already set out the position in relation to hospices. She says that she wants to swap sides. I mean, heaven forbid. After 14 years of breaking everything, we're getting on with the job of fixing it, and all she can do is cart from the sidelines with absolutely no policy.
Mr. Speaker, winter fuel payments have been snatched. The jobs tax is hammering everyone from business to charities. The Chancellor promised a once-in-a-Parliament budget that she would not come back for more. And in that budget, she said there will be no extension of the freeze in income tax thresholds. Ahead of the emergency budget, will he repeat? Mr. Speaker, ahead of the emergency budget, will he repeat the commitment that she made?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she's got such prescriptive questions, she can't actually adapt them to the answers that I'm giving. I mean, Mr. Speaker, I think she now calls herself a Conservative realist. Well, I'm realistic about the Conservatives. The reality is they left open borders and she was the cheerleader. They crashed the economy, mortgages went through the roof. The NHS was left on its knees and they hollowed out the armed forces. This government has already delivered 2 million extra NHS appointments, 750 breakfast clubs, record returns of people who shouldn't be here, and a fully funded increase in our defence spending. That is the difference that a Labour government makes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A lady came to see me recently who needed help. She had a disability. It meant that her children have to help her cut up her food. They have to help her wash beneath the waist. They have to supervise her as she goes to the toilet. Under the Tory welfare system, we were able to get that lady on PIP. Under the Prime Minister's new proposed system, she will get zero. Nothing. And after 14 years of the Tory government, and many of us wanting to see the back of them, can the Prime Minister answer one question? What was the point if Labour are going to do this?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've lived with the impact of a disability in our family through my mother and brother all my life. I do understand the human impact of this, but the current system is morally and economically indefensible, and we're right to reform it, and nobody should be defending the broken status quo. We are proceeding on three principles: that if you can work, you should work. If you need help into work, the state should help you, not hinder you. And if you can never work, you must be supported and protected. They are the right principles, but we can't leave the current system as it is.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey.
Can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks on Ukraine and Gaza? And can I also pay tribute to Group Captain John Paddy Hemingway and all our heroes from the Battle of Britain? I know that members across this House will, like me, have heard from GPs, dentists, community pharmacists and care homes who are all deeply worried about the impact of the national insurance rise on the services they provide to patients. That's why the House of Lords passed a Liberal Democrat amendment to exempt NHS and care providers. That amendment comes before this House this afternoon, but we're hearing worrying reports that the Prime Minister will order Labour MPs to vote against it. Will the Prime Minister reassure this House and patients across the country that these reports are not true?
Prime Minister.
Can I start by pointing out that because of the changes we made at that budget, we were able to put record amounts of money into our National Health Service, and vitally important that we did so. And it isn't right to simply oppose the measures we had to take to raise the money and at the same time say, as the honourable gentleman does, that he wants the benefits of the increase in funding for the NHS. The two can't sit together. We have already invested an additional £3.7 billion of funding into social care, including £880 million to increase the social care grant. So we are taking steps. But the basic point remains, which is we can't make the investment into the NHS if we don't raise the money. And you can't simply oppose any raising of money and at the same time welcome the money into the NHS.
Say it, Davey.
By that reply, and I hope he and the Chancellor will think about taking money from the NHS ahead of the spring statement and reverse it. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to turn to the issue of illegal hair coursing. Criminal gangs are terrorising rural communities across our country, from Cambridgeshire to Devon, from Oxfordshire to Wiltshire. Men in balaclavas are threatening and abusing farmers as these criminals tear across their fields in 4x4s. Farmers are warning that it's only a matter of time before someone is killed. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that we must act urgently against this appalling criminality? And will he back our calls for a comprehensive rural crime strategy so we can not just stamp out hair coursing, but keep our rural communities safe from all crime?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to him for raising this important issue, and it is a matter of deep concern. We've already developing a rural crime strategy, but we'll happily work with him and others to develop it further.
Lawrence Turner.
Northfield are deeply concerned about the scourge of knife crime, and I pay tribute to the professionalism of West Midlands Police for their response to these horrendous attacks. But there are still 1,200 fewer police officers and PCSOs in the force than in 2010. A new bid has been submitted to the Home Office for 150 more officers. Will he look at this issue so that the police can do more to keep our streets secure and safe?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I join him in commending the West Midlands Police for keeping his community safe? We are doubling our investment to £200 million towards the recruitment of 13,000 neighbourhood police, giving every community a named officer to help tackle violent crime. And we're currently working through bids with forces to ensure that we do so, and I'll make sure he gets a meeting with the relevant policing minister to discuss.
Conor Denyer.
Mr. Speaker, we have a deeply unfair, unequal economic system where vast numbers of people are struggling, yet billionaires are getting richer and richer. Does the Prime Minister really think that the way to tackle this is to put the onus onto older people, children, and now sick and disabled people, rather than on the shoulders of the super rich with a wealth tax, those people who could most easily afford to pay? And if the Prime Minister uses the phrase difficult choices in his answer, please will he specify difficult choices for whom?
Well, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we do have a proportional tax system, and we have raised tax on the wealthiest under this government. But her advice would count for a bit more if their manifesto hadn't been a recipe for £80 billion of extra borrowing. That is to do exactly what Liz Truss did to the economy, and that doesn't help any of the people that she's claiming to support.
Mohammed Yazid.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the government's ambitious growth plans for Oxford-Cambridge Arc, which promises to reverse years of decline and transform the eastern region by driving prosperity, creating jobs, and delivering much-needed housing. But does the Prime Minister agree with me that the crowning achievement of this plan would be the establishment of a world-class theme park in Bedford Borough? It would transform our local economy, create thousands of new jobs and opportunities, and elevate Bedford as a national hub for leisure and tourism.
Prime Minister.
Well, he's right to raise this important project, which we are working for. And it's vital that we do unleash the potential of the Oxford-Cambridge corridor and, of course, Bedford by generating growth, jobs and opportunities. And we're doing that by speeding up the delivery of new infrastructure projects, slashing red tape and getting Britain building.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of my constituents have approached me about the inadequate treatment of young people's eating disorders. This year, despite a 30% increase in referrals, the majority of ICBs have cut real-term funding. Currently, as I've seen in my own family and my weekly surgeries, those who reach out for treatment are told, in effect, come back when you're thinner, increasing both the human and financial costs of treatment. Does the Prime Minister agree? Timely intervention is critical, and will he meet with me to discuss how we fund it?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Well, he's right. Too many people with eating disorders are not getting the treatment that they need. The NHS is expanding eating disorder treatment services with a focus on accessing treatment earlier and closer to home. And we're also providing access to specialist mental health professionals in every school. And I'll make sure that he's kept updated.
Paul Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Labour's flagship crime and policing bill is designed to tackle the rise in antisocial behaviour, theft and shoplifting that has occurred under the Tories. It grants police the power to confiscate disruptive off-road vehicles. This measure will tackle the scourge of off-road bikes in my constituency. Does the Prime Minister agree that we are the party of law and order and that we are fulfilling our commitments?
Mr. Speaker, it's totally unacceptable for anyone to feel intimidated or unsafe due to the actions of reckless and selfish individuals. Whatever the vehicle, our bill gives police forces stronger powers to seize them immediately and put a stop to antisocial behaviour. That's our plan for change in action, making our streets and communities safer.
Danny Kruger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years to get ready, they came into power with no plan to reform welfare. But now, in a panic because of their economic mismanagement, they're cutting benefits for disabled people without consulting them at all. It probably says in his folder that the High Court ruled the Conservatives' consultation was too short, but at least we consulted. They're not consulting at all. So will the Prime Minister explain why he is doing things to disabled people and not with them?
No, what it says in my favour is they had 14 years, including five with a majority of... They didn't need to consult, get on with it. They had a majority of 80 for the last 5 years. They're now carping on with some of their ideas. 14 years, and they didn't implement a single one. They simply broke the system. They're in no place to lecture other people.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to the charity Shelter, there are more homeless children in my city of Edinburgh than there are in the whole of Wales. That's an appalling legacy of 18 years of SNP government. Does the Prime Minister agree with me there should be no homeless children? And will he work with me, the Scottish Parliament and anyone who'll listen to end child homelessness in Scotland?
Well, the situation he describes is an appalling indictment of the SNP record. The party opposite left record homelessness in England. The SNP record is equally shameful, a record number of children in temporary accommodation. Mr. Speaker, we're investing £1 billion to tackle homelessness, we're abolishing no-fault evictions and building 1.5 million new homes. Meanwhile, the SNP have cut their affordable housing budget. They've had the largest settlement since devolution. They've got the power, the money. Now it's time they started delivering.
Alison Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, I received an email from Santander informing me that both the Bognor Regis and the Rustington branches in my constituency are set to close, with 4 other bank branches shutting across the constituency in 2023 alone. The most vulnerable members of our society are being gradually cut off from essential banking services. Small, cash-based businesses will also struggle to deposit their takings, faced with the added burden of travelling to Chichester or Worthing, making it even harder for them to operate. So what decisive action is the Prime Minister taking to guarantee that people and businesses in my constituency and across the country are not left without access to cash and vital banking services?
Mr. Speaker, we are rolling out 350 banking hubs across all communities, and I'll happily arrange for her to have a meeting with the Minister to discuss how that might affect her constituency.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Firstly, I welcome the Prime Minister's announcement of £200 million from the National Wealth Fund for the industrial future of Grangemouth. But today, I want to ask specifically about the workers facing redundancy. Given the assurances from the Prime Minister on the 18th of February and repeated by Anas Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, as recently as the 4th of March, can the Prime Minister confirm that the guarantee given on 18 months pay protection for all of those workers losing their jobs due to the Grangemouth refinery closure will be honoured, including those shared services workers, and say how the payment can be claimed by all those affected?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, Petroenius have said that every employee made redundant will get 18 months full pay. The Project Willow report that's come out today says how we can support a sustainable industrial future for Grangemouth, which is incredibly important, delivering jobs and economic growth. As he references, I've announced £200 million through the National Wealth Fund to secure the site's long-term future. And of course, that's backed by the £100 million Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal, which is training and the training guarantee to support workers into good jobs. They're all the actions that we were taking on this very, very important issue.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, the House of Lords considers the Infected Blood Compensation Scheme regulations, which diverge from the proposals of the inquiry report and the government response. The regulations introduce new exclusions, treat victims inconsistently and downgrade some previously agreed awards, such as that to my constituent Owen Saville. Will the Prime Minister remember the promise made to victims like Owen and think again?
Well, the victims of this scandal have suffered unspeakably, and I'm pleased that at the budget we set aside the £11.8 billion to compensate them in relation to this appalling scandal. I would gently point out that the party opposite was committed rightly to this compensation but didn't provide a single penny in the column to pay for it. The Infected Blood Compensation Authority has been established and began to make payments last year. Over £1 billion interim payments have been made, and we do remain completely committed to cooperating with the inquiry and acting on its recommendations.
Elise Midgley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everyone is talking about Adolescence, the series by Knowsley's own Stephen Graham and Christine Tomarco. It highlights online male radicalisation and violence against girls. The creators of the show are calling for screenings in Parliament and schools to spark change. So will the Prime Minister back this campaign to counter toxic misogyny early and give young men the role models they deserve?
Prime Minister.
Yes, and at home we are watching Adolescence with our children. I've got a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl, and it's a very, very good documentary to watch, or drama. This violence carried out by young men, influenced by what they see online, is a real problem. It's abhorrent, and we have to tackle it. We are putting in specialist rape and sexual offences teams in every police force, doing work on the 999 calls. But this is also a matter of culture that I think it's important that across the whole House we tackle this emerging and growing problem.
Helen Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberal Democrats have long called for a UK-EU youth mobility scheme, and polling has repeatedly shown that the majority of Brits support this idea, including my constituents in Epsom and Ewell. A well-structured and controlled scheme would show that the government is serious about providing opportunities for young people and backing British business. So will the Prime Minister stop sitting on the fence and finally commit to a youth mobility scheme?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are working closely with our European colleagues and the EU in particular, and we are working to a reset of the relationship. We won't be returning to freedom of movement. I've made that repeatedly clear, but we're making good progress.
Lauren Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous government failed to properly support further and adult education over the last 14 years. And in contrast, the Prime Minister's personal commitment to technical qualifications has been encouraging. Last year's budget provided a welcome boost to some parts of the sector, but need and demand is outstripping available funding. Skills are crucial to the government meeting its missions to deliver economic growth, build 1.5 million homes, and to transition to a green economy. Can the Prime Minister provide reassurance that the funding model will be reviewed so that we won't see colleges having to turn people away who want to gain the skills that our country so desperately needs?
Prime Minister.
Well, she's right. Further education plays a critical role in giving young people the skills and confidence that they need, and of course the training we need for the future. We are investing £400 million on education for 16 to 19-year-olds this year, and our levy-funded growth and skills offer will create jobs in key industries, and I can assure her that the funding will deliver enough places for young people.
John Cooper.
Speaker, thank you. Large spending announcements for defence would make you think that Britain is marching us to war, but the MOD is bimbling along with procurement systems better designed for peacetime. Will the Prime Minister use his good offices to bring British industry into this fight, and quickly?
Prime Minister.
Yes, but they did leave a bit of a mess that we are clearing up, having hollowed out our armed forces and having not made the necessary investment that we needed in our defence. We've announced the largest sustained increase since the Cold War of 2.5% by 2027 and 3% in the next Parliament, subject to economic circumstances. So yes, we are getting on with the job and clearing up the mess that they left.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituency, Stratford and Bow, has the greatest number of high-rise buildings with dangerous cladding in the country. On Friday, I visited Stratford Fire Station. Our brilliant local firefighters told me that 77 high-rise buildings in Newham and 165 high-rise buildings in Tower Hamlets are covered in hazardous materials, many of them deemed unsafe. Thousands of my constituents have been calling for justice for years. Can the Prime Minister tell me what the government is doing to ensure that private developers are held to account for the dangerous cladding on the high-rises that they have built?
Prime Minister.
Well, she's right. Remediation has been far too slow, and everybody deserves a safe and secure home. We've signed a contract with 54 major developers who will pay for or fix over 1,700 buildings, and we're accelerating that progress. We will take tough action against those who evade their responsibilities. We will recover taxpayers' funds and make sure those responsible pay up and fix unsafe buildings quickly.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, every week to ask sensible questions, and I expect sensible answers. But all I get is glazed expressions and waffle from the opposite benches. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Prime Minister a very simple question on behalf of all the net zero sceptics. If we became net zero tomorrow, by how much would it reduce the Earth's temperature by? Simple question.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, net zero is of course not easy, but it's a huge opportunity to boost our growth, our jobs and our economy. And so he knows my views on that. But you know, he complains that I've better ideas if they stop fawning over Putin. And I understand the member for Clacton wants to be Prime Minister. He can't even lead a party that fits in the back of a taxi.
Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1 in 5 disabled people in social housing and 1 in 3 disabled private renters live in inaccessible housing. One of my constituents with severe fibromyalgia and PTSD lives on a first-floor flat with no lift access. As we build the 1.5 million new homes that this country needs, will the Prime Minister ensure that they are built to be accessible and adaptable so disabled and older people can live independently for generations to come?
Prime Minister.
She's right. Everybody needs to be able to access a home that is suitable for them and meets their needs. The planning rules, Mr. Speaker, already mean councils must consider the needs of disabled people when planning new homes. We will go further, setting out our policies on accessible new new homes very shortly. And we're boosting the Disabled Facilities Grant by £172 million, helping more people make vital improvements and live independent lives.
Lee Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite Ukraine being the victim in Russia's illegal aggression, President Zelensky has shown leadership to his people by committing to the US plans for a ceasefire. However, it's clear that Putin is playing for time and still carrying out daily attacks on Ukrainian people. So, Prime Minister, is now not the time to take those frozen Russian assets, to seize them, to give them to the Ukrainian people, to strengthen their hand at the negotiating table and to punish Russian aggression?
Minister.
Well, on both points, I spoke to President Zelensky last night following the discussions yesterday to discuss the way forward. On the wider question of the assets, look, it's complicated, but we're working with others to see what is possible, but it isn't straightforward.
Ewan Steinback.
Mr. Speaker, the release of Project Willow today is a step forward in securing good jobs and an industrial future for Grangemouth. However, the Government needs to work at pace to ensure the recommendations in Willow are acted upon. Can the Prime Minister outline what steps he will be taking to ensure barriers to a rapid transition at Grangemouth are removed and investment is progressed as quickly as possible?
Well, I'm very grateful for him for raising Grangemouth again the second time in this session, and that's because it's centrally important. He'll have heard what I had to say about the projects that we're looking at to ensure the long-term future of Grangemouth, the interim measures that are being taken, and of course the £200 million of the Wealth Fund that I announced just a few weeks ago.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister and I disagree about much: the family farm tax, the NI jobs tax, and the cut in winter fuel payments, but we surely agree that the common good is built on public order. Crossbows in the hands of killers cost lives. They cost the lives of 3 innocent women last year. Now, the previous government launched a consultation over a year ago on the regulation of crossbows, their sale and use, and we've heard nothing since. They are as powerful as guns, as silent as knives. Will the Prime Minister agree for one of his ministers to come to the House before Easter to give us a clear instruction about what the Government intends to do before any more lives are lost?
Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising this, and he's right to do so. It's a shocking issue, and the case he refers to is a truly shocking case. I think that's agreed across the House. We are working on this, and I'll make sure that he gets an update to ensure that he's across the detail of what we're doing.
Final question, Diane Abbott.
Most members of this House will be aware that the welfare system can be a nightmare to navigate and does indeed need reform. But could we have less of this rhetoric about his £5 billion package of disability benefit so-called reform being moral? There is nothing moral about cutting benefits for what may be up to 1 million people. This is not about morality. This is about the Treasury's wish to balance the country's books on the back of the most vulnerable and poor people in this society.
Mr. Speaker, she's a passionate advocate and has been for a long time on this issue, and I pay tribute to that. But as she rightly acknowledges, the current system is broken. And this is where I disagree with her. I think 1 in 8 young people not in employment, training or education, that's 1 million young people. I think that's a moral issue, Mr. Speaker, because all the evidence suggests that someone in that situation at that stage of their life is going to find it incredibly difficult ever to get out of that level of dependency. That cuts across the opportunity and aspiration. It's the root of my values and Labour values about how we take working people forward. So I do see it as a moral issue. I'm not going to turn away from that. I am genuinely shocked that 1 million people, young people, are in that position, and I'm not prepared to shrug my shoulders and walk past it.
That completes Prime Minister's question.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Very, very good afternoon, 19th of March 2025. My name is Miah MBE. What we're going to do every Wednesday, I think, is watch along Prime Minister's Questions Time. We did this in Oldham with the local council sort of meetings, and over a period of time we managed to educate people to understand what was taking place, appreciate some of the subtlety of what's going on, and also mock and ridicule, because that's what we do, isn't it? We mock and ridicule our leaders, and we expose the sham that is our democracy, because it's increasingly clear it is a sham, and more so. Now, first and foremost, what is the purpose of Prime Minister's Questions? Because it's a long tradition, and I think I want to very, very quickly go through that. At its very simplest, it is an opportunity for members of Parliament to ask the Prime Minister questions. But as you can see, it's all rigged in a certain way and it's scripted. But that's by the by. If you get beyond that, there is a purpose to it. It is, at its simplest level, an opportunity for local MPs to raise issues that are important to their constituents and to get the Prime Minister's steer on it, or raise it as an issue, because local MPs, actually as powerful as we think they are, once they get into Westminster, aren't very powerful. So Prime Minister's Questions is an opportunity. So you would have seen the MP from the West Midlands stand up and talk about the need for more police officers where he is. So that's one of the sort of issues, one of the ways in which Prime Minister's Questions is relevant. Another way is also for MPs to raise topical issues, and you saw it at the end, I think, with Diane Abbott, where she raised her perspective on the reforms on disability benefits. And you listen to the Prime Minister's response to that. And I'll get to that issue in a bit. But it's an opportunity to raise topical issues. And also you saw Lee Anderson stand up and raise a topical issue on net zero. He didn't get an answer, but he raised an issue on net zero. So it's an opportunity for opposition MPs to raise issues, topical issues, and also grandstand. It's clearly an opportunity for the Labour Party and the government, essentially the government, to promote itself. So there's a whole host of questions that are predetermined by the Labour Party, where they want to, give themselves a slap on the back or attack the opposition with. So you'll see Labour Party MPs standing up and doing that throughout. And of course, finally, it is meant to be an opportunity for the opposition leader to stand up and go toe-to-toe with the Prime Minister and demonstrate his or her leadership traits, of which we will get to with Kemi Badenoch. So that is what it is meant to be, and it is poor, and it's been poor for a number of years, as you can see. But we'll persevere with it over the next year or so. So the plan is, for those of you joining me, the plan is to watch Prime Minister's Questions together, and then pull out one of the key sort of national themes in terms of politics. And where I'd like to start, of course, today is Kemi Badenoch. Yesterday, the official leader of the opposition went about attempting to relaunch the party. She went about attempting to relaunch the party. So I'll play her summary, and there's something I want you to listen to with me, if that's okay. So those of you who come and watch with me, I critique, I analyse, I systematically go through things. It's boring. It is boring, but it's what I do. So those of you who are watching, that's what I'm here for. If you find my work of value, please do consider subscribing to Redwall and the Rabble. Completely free, though. If you can afford to do so, I urge you to click the option that allows you to contribute either 75 pence a week, £3 a month, or the £30 a year. All of my work is publicly funded. It's funded by you. No one supports me apart from you. And we are nowhere near the numbers we need to be. So that's where we are. So if you find this of value, please consider supporting me with either here, and that's ideal, with Redwall and the Rabble. And I'd simply ask those who can afford it, commit £3 a month. And enough of you did, would be fine. And if you already have, or you don't want to monthly commit, then please consider buying me a coffee, either via Buy Me a Coffee or through PayPal. Let me bring up, and of course, you should be subscribing to this channel already. Yeah, please, let me bring up what Kemi had to say.
Thank you.
Just give me a second.
The Conservative Party is taking the first step in the UK's biggest policy renewal programme in 50 years, dealing with a society that is fragmenting, not integrating, fixing healthcare, repairing the mess Labour are making right now in education, improving productivity, controlling immigration and dealing with the lawfare that stops elected officials from making democratic decisions. We don't just exist to win elections. We have to know what we are winning for and what we are going to do after we win. Fighting for ordinary people, for the institution of the family, for business, for common sense, for less tax, less state and less interference. And finally, ensuring that our generation can leave a real and true inheritance, a better world for our children once again. Thank you.
So that is Kemi Badenoch yesterday. She's put it on her own X page and it's got a measly 44,000 views. Pitiful. So that's how much of a damp squid it was. Now, she's already put up what she's her response to the budget. So you can listen to that in terms of PMQ. So have a quick listen to this. This is her, Badenoch's main takeaway. This is where I've attacked the Prime Minister.
His MPs know that this could affect, and he did not answer that question.
Hold on, let me bring it to the beginning.
He hasn't made these provisions. He keeps talking about budget benefits. Unemployment is not a benefit. Businesses closing are not benefits. I asked him whether he would exempt hospices, even children's hospices, from the jobs tax. He did not answer that question. His MPs know that this could affect end-of-life care. So I will ask the same question again. Will he exempt hospices from paying his jobs tax? Today, the Conservative Party is taking...
Her attack on him was to do with the national insurance rise, and hospices have forgot to pay. So that's what her line of attack was, and of course he's avoided that. And there's an emergency budget. There's an emergency budget next week. So we'll see what comes. We'll see what comes of that.
Neil,
this is a speech yesterday.
We are living off the inheritance of previous generations. For 3 centuries, every era in our country's history left a better legacy for its children. The greatness of the UK was forged by the sacrifices of our ancestors. They built, they innovated, and they took tough decisions. They never assumed that prosperity was guaranteed. They made sure that it was. But that has bred an assumption that Britain will always be wealthy. We are a wealthy country, but we are becoming weaker through complacency. We are losing our resilience. We can't make things like we used to. We don't build as quickly. We are spending too much on debt, too much on welfare, and too little on defense. We are not growing like we should be. That's us. That's Canada, a little higher. That's the US growth. And up there at the top is Australia. We are not creating a legacy for the next generation. Worse than that, we are mortgaging our children's future by not recognizing that the world has changed. We're making things harder and harder for them across the board. If you look at real disposable income, or GDP per capita, or home ownership, you will see that things are stagnating or going backwards. In 1974, you could save up for a deposit to buy a house in less than 6 months. Now the average time is more than 11 years. Conservatism is about ensuring the very best of our society is preserved for the next generation, not just our own. As Roger Scruton said, conservatism is about the love of what exists, not because it is perfect, but because it is ours, and because it has grown from the lives of those who came before us. Our party has a proud history of helping the country recover from crisis. The Cold War, the economic reforms of the 1980s, the aftermath of the 2008 financial crash. It has often been our duty to shepherd our country's recovery. Yet last July, we suffered the worst defeat in our party's history. We replaced the principles-based government that brought us success with the managerialism of Labour that gave our power to quangos and courts. We assumed that we would always be wealthy, so we focused on the status quo rather than the future. And now Labour are back, and they are already making everything worse. Jobs are disappearing, taxes are rising, and growth is shrinking. They are vandalizing education, and they are completely clueless on the need for real reform of regulation. But we have to acknowledge that Labour are there because we made mistakes. And the public made it very clear that the Conservative Party needed some time away from government. Our job right now is to use that time wisely, just as Margaret Thatcher and David Cameron did in generations past. And just like the 1970s and 2000s, our party cannot shortcut our way back into office with easy answers or rushed announcements. We must develop credible plans that are based on shared Conservative values: personal responsibility, citizenship, sound money, family, freedom, and so much more. Plans that show that we are thinking about tomorrow, plans that are ambitious, tackling problems with the detail they deserve, but are rooted in realism, not wishful thinking. Today, I am talking about one of the biggest ways that we are destroying our children's inheritance. Let's start by telling the truth on energy and net zero. Every single thing we do in our daily lives is dependent on cheap, abundant energy. When energy became cheap and abundant, living standards began to rise. Health and life expectancy grew. Cheap, abundant energy is the foundation of civilization as we know it today. We mess with it at our peril. But that's exactly what's been happening for 20 years. And it's now starting to cause real pain for everyday people and businesses. The cost of electricity, far too high, much higher than nearby and comparative countries, with the real possibility that it's going even higher still with environmental levies. A big chunk of our existing bills are not direct energy costs. People are struggling to pay them. Businesses, especially manufacturing businesses, are closing down, and there is no real plan for bringing costs down. That surely cannot hold. It's fantasy politics built on nothing, promising the earth and costing it too. As a society, we are or we have been trying to do two things at once: keep energy costs down whilst reducing our impact on the environment. These are both noble aims. Conservatives like Margaret Thatcher have always been custodians of our natural environment, cherishing the forests that breathe life into our world, protecting the rivers that nourish our lands, and preserving the landscapes that inspire our souls. It is our duty to safeguard the delicate balance of nature for future generations. But the current policies the UK has been implementing are not doing this, while at the same time driving up the cost of energy. We're falling between two stools: too high costs, too little progress. And why? Because there's never, ever been a detailed plan. Ed Miliband's Climate Change Act 2008, no plan. The carbon budgets, no economic plan. And then in 2019, Parliament legislated for net zero by 2050, but no plan. A multi-trillion-pound, 30-year project touching every single aspect of all our lives was decided in 90 minutes without a single vote. Of the 22 MPs who spoke that day, only 2 sounded notes of caution. I was one of them. I asked for the plan. I asked for it that day. I asked for it many days after. And I waited and waited and waited. 840 days later, a plan came, and it wasn't enough. So much so that environmental bodies are taking the government to court and winning because there isn't enough detail. We are closing down oil fields in Scotland that we need from transition from gas to renewables because the plan doesn't make sense. Let's think about it for a minute. We are already 1/6 of the way through net zero 2050 that we planned that day, and we are still arguing about what the plan is to get there. And all the politicians who gloss over the lack of a plan will be long gone when those targets are missed in the future and our children suffer. So please don't be fooled, and certainly don't be fooled by other parties' rhetoric. I remember Nick Clegg dismissing the idea of building new nuclear because it would not come online until 2022. That decision has cost us billions. Who was the Lib Dem Energy Secretary? Ed Davey, now leading the Liberal Democrats. And new parties will turn up, like Reform, who don't have real answers to our country's challenges. That's why their energy policy fell apart right after they announced it. We need a serious approach. We've got to stop pretending it's simple, and we have got to stop government by press release announcements without a policy plan. Making promises and not delivering is exactly the reason that the political class has lost trust. The only way that we can regain it is to tell the unvarnished truth. Net zero by 2050 is impossible. I don't say that with pleasure. I want a better future and a better environment for our children, but we have to get real. Anyone who has done any serious analysis knows it cannot be achieved without a significant drop in our living standards, or worse, by bankrupting us. Responsible leaders don't indulge in fictions which are going to make families poorer or mortgage their children's future. Without the rest of the world doing the same, we are making our country less safe, less secure, and less resilient. Let me give you 3 truths at the heart of net zero. First, the published plans are completely muddled. It is true that the UK has made the greatest progress on carbon emissions in the developed world. Yet we are only responsible for 1% of global emissions. Even if we hit absolute zero, we will not have net zero around the world if other countries are not following us. And they are not. They certainly will not if they see us bankrupting ourselves to get there. Our success at reducing emissions has also come at a significant cost: the highest electricity bills in the developed world. What's extraordinary is that so much of the cost of our energy bills is not directly from the wholesale cost of energy. Huge amounts are being spent on switching around how we distribute electricity, because we effectively build two systems now of electricity generation, one based on renewables and one not. One for when the sun shines and the wind blows, and one for when they don't. Instead of dealing with these challenges, Labour play rhetorical games, talking about missions, goals, and mistaking press releases about GB Energy for actual solutions. The real reason no one in their government is talking about a proper overall plan is that they know it would reveal just how catastrophic the actual costs will be for families, for businesses, and for our economy. Those costs include families being forced to replace perfectly functioning cars, boilers, and cookers with more expensive, less reliable versions of the same thing. The costs will mean businesses paying much more than we already are for energy. So our industrial base and manufacturing businesses get weakened even further. And it will mean our economy losing out on exploiting our own natural resources in the North Sea, while being saddled with ever greater debt. That's just the first truth. Second, even where there is a plan, we are behind. Let's look at one easy example. By 2040, the Committee on Climate Change says more than half of UK homes need to rip out their boilers and replace them with a heat pump. There is no way we can do this quickly enough on that timescale. 17 million houses need to be fitted with an expensive heat pump in just 15 years. How many houses have one now? Fewer than 300,000. Because heat pumps run on a lot of expensive electricity, and it turns out many people just don't like them. But let's look at the good statistics. Last year, we saw the highest number of heat pumps ever installed in the UK, 50,000. That's the best we've ever done. So at that rate, it will take 340 years, not 15, to get to the target. And most of the 50,000 were installed with some form of government subsidy, or as I prefer to call it, taxpayers' money. There's a lot less of taxpayers' money now, and that's before government spending gets further constrained by the need to spend more on defence. This is not a criticism of green technology. I support the shift to renewables when they make energy cheaper and more secure. However, they are not a perfect solution and come with their own challenges, which brings me to the third truth. We are massively exposing ourselves to countries who do not share our values. Take solar panels. The good news is that costs have dropped in the last decade. Here's the less good news. 10 years ago, we were heavily dependent on China for all of the key components. Today, we're even more dependent. Look at the top dozen makers of solar panels. They are nearly all Chinese. That's an extraordinary dependency, given what we learned during COVID about over-reliance on these supply chains. What about wind farms? Where do we think that most production is currently? You guessed it, China, which means that they are all produced using Chinese energy. 60% of their supply comes from coal-fired power stations. They are building a new one every other week to keep up with our demand. Look at electric vehicles, all reliant on batteries to work. One country dominates production of the component parts which create them. Those three truths are why I call myself a net zero skeptic. Muddled plans, unrealistic targets and deadlines, over-reliance on China. We have got to start acknowledging what is in plain sight. Net zero makes us dangerously dependent on countries who don't share our values, and it is risking our energy security. It is time to stop pretending everything will be fine. And I'm certainly not debating whether climate change exists. It does. I badly want to leave a much better environmental inheritance for my children and for yours. But it doesn't look like we are going to get remotely close to net zero by 2050, and neither will any autocracy, not that they're trying to anyway. This is what happens when politics turns into fantasy. Maybe some of it will change, but it doesn't look promising. Ed Miliband spends all of his time making big promises, telling people he will cut household bills by £300 while having no idea how. And by the way, they've gone up by almost £300 since Labour came into office. I often say that when you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they need to hear. We have to tell the truth. The plans for net zero by 2050 are impossible. We have to do better than this. That's why, as part of our policy renewal, we are going to do something that Labour failed to do in 14 years of opposition. We are going to deal with reality, confront the real problems, answer the real questions, and be ready with a plan. We will cover numerous areas, but today we start on energy and net zero. To do that, our team, led by Shadow Secretary of State Claire Coutinho, will be looking at all aspects of the UK's future energy and net zero policies. Few have spent more time trying to unpack the model thinking at the heart of the net zero debate than Claire. She will be supported by Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, Andrew Bowie, and Lord Offord. I am tasking her team with finding and working with the people who know the truth and who can come up with achievable solutions, people who can answer from experience, how we can deliver cheap and clean energy without bankrupting businesses, without eye-watering bills for households, without dependencies on hostile or unstable countries. Labour may not be interested in these questions, but we are. We are interested because as Conservatives, we want to protect our environment. We want to secure our energy and deliver a better world for our children. Someone has to save these noble objectives from the zealots who have hijacked this agenda. The best way to deliver clean energy and a better environment is with the market. Not state diktat, not pretend statistics from vested interests or rent seekers who want to keep this fiction going for as long as possible. Telling the truth on net zero and energy is just the start of actually ensuring we leave an inheritance for the next generation. I said at my party conference speech that we were going to rewire, reprogram, and reboot the way government works so it serves the public again. Today, the Conservative Party is taking the first step in the UK's biggest policy renewal programme in 50 years. Tomorrow, my shadow cabinet will begin to do the same with many of the other problems that we see. Getting people back to work, dealing with a society that is fragmenting, not integrating, fixing healthcare, repairing the mess Labour are making right now in education, improving productivity, controlling immigration and dealing with the lawfare that stops elected officials from making democratic decisions.
So there you have it. The Conservatives have apparently launched a policy renewal programme. And they are starting on all of these themes, and they decided to start on net zero, or start with net zero. I watched all of what Kemi Badenoch had to say, and I'm not at all surprised at how few people are watching or watched what she had to say and how flat it was. And she's not a leader, is she? She's someone you have in your team to dot the I's, cross the T's, and give the substance to what you need to move forward on. She's perhaps a teacher. A teacher classroom assistant is what it comes across as. Now, what I'm going to do, and I don't want to be unfair to her, at the same time, Robert Jenrick released a whole host of videos online. At a similar time frame, I'm going to play him, and I want you to listen to what he had to say. So Badenoch released it on net zero.
I can't help escape the conclusion that the Justice Secretary actually supports these two-tier sentencing rules. Why? Because she supported a group which called the criminal justice system institutionally racist. Her representatives walked through the two-tier guidance and approved them. And she refuses to legislate to block the guidance coming into force or to take any sanction against the members of the Sentencing Council that drafted them. If there's one thing we know about Labour governments, is that they always end in tears. This time, it's a second-tier Justice Secretary pursuing two-tier justice, all to suck up to her boss, two-tier Keir. I'm in Birmingham, and talking to local people, it's clear the mess that the Labour Party have got this great city into. The council behind me is bankrupt. Council tax is being hiked. Services are being slashed. And above all, rubbish is literally piling up on the city's streets. It's clear that 8 months into this Labour government, people do not feel better off. And that's because of the disastrous decisions of Rachel Reeves in her budget last year, where she hiked taxes and killed business confidence. Growth is down, inflation is up, unemployment is rising. And in 12 days, she's going to have to come back to Parliament for an emergency budget. It's time she took responsibility and began to clean up the mess that the Labour Party have created in Birmingham and across the country.
Sentencing Council powers of Secretary of State Bill, second reading.
Object.
Objection taken.
It's very concerning and not unexpected. This is the result of the decisions that were taken by the Chancellor in her disastrous budget last year, where she hiked taxes, particularly on businesses, with the increase in national insurance that's going to come in next month. And that has led to growth falling, confidence across business, particularly in manufacturing, collapsing, and further harm to the economy. And in just 12 days' time, we're going to have this emergency budget, which Rachel Reeves said she'd never have to do. She's coming back to Parliament to cut public spending and potentially to increase taxes. And this is all the result of the bad decisions that she made last year.
Shoplifting is at a record high last year, and in London the number of mobile phones being stolen was the highest ever level. You know, people think this is only going to get worse. We see it in our daily lives. There's a sense that these crimes are almost being decriminalised, and a small number of hyper-prolific thieves are responsible for a large number of these crimes. In fact, 8% of criminals are responsible for more than 50% of all the crimes. So a commonsensical criminal justice system would get the police to go and arrest these hyper-prolific thieves rather than tackling issues like so-called non-crime hate incidents that are a waste of resources. And then the courts would ensure these people go down for longer, get them off our streets, give the public breathing space from all of this crime. But the Labour government are proposing to do precisely the opposite to that. They are saying that they're considering scrapping short sentences. And when I asked the Justice Secretary during the week if she could reassure the public that she is not going to do that for burglary, for theft, for shoplifting, she wouldn't give us an answer. So I think that Labour is going to get rid of these short sentences, and hyper-prolific thieves, the people causing all of this harm on our streets, they will be celebrating. They once again will be popping champagne corks.
There's some news just in. Shoplifting is its highest level on...
Okay. Who's the leader? I think of the pair of them, unfortunately, they ended up with the wrong one. Now, I'm not a Conservative any more than I'm a member of Reform. But the reality is you have two options, two opposition parties that can genuinely defeat Labour at the next general election. It might be that they both need to work with each other. I don't know. But that is the options as you see, as we currently stand. And to aid them in their consultation, Kemi Badenoch and the Conservatives have done this. I've never seen anything like it, if I'm honest with you, with a national party. And they've launched this webpage called policy.conservatives.com, where you can help them build Britain's future. And you click on it, whether you're a member of the public or whether you're a member, and I click on it as a member of the public, and they want to ask us questions on all of these themes: business and trade, crime, culture, immigration, legal services, social care, education, so on and so on, and what we think. They don't say what they think, and I've been on a webpage today, I've been on the Twitter feed on all of these themes. They don't say what they think. They don't say where they went wrong. They don't even say what the issues are. It is the most pitiful level of engagement I have ever seen. It's what I expect of a simpleton local candidate for a council election, where they say, oh, we'll do what you say. We want to know what you think. Well, actually, no. We elect our politicians because they should have a position to start off with, and at the very least, on what's wrong and what success looks like, and then the middle bit we can help put together. So that's where we are, Belinda. And I just wanted to share, make it completely fair. So you saw the criticism of reform and the reflection of reform last week. This week, we've got the Conservatives and where the Conservatives are currently. Next week, maybe I'll do UKIP. Maybe I'll do UKIP next week and you can see yourself where they're up to next week. Because we are genuinely stuck and we need to get behind someone somewhere. So if the Conservatives are genuine, look out for the videos, the documents, the speeches that come out to do with some of the themes that you care about. Because sadly, as you saw in Prime Minister's questions, once again, Kemi Badenoch completely missed the point. Now, I'm not saying taxes that hospices pay aren't important. Of course they are important. But there's an emergency budget coming in 12 days' time. Since Labour got in, you've seen what the themes have been to do with. It's to do with law and order. Law and order. Big one, law and order. The two-tier justice system. Yet yesterday, she launched her policy on raising net zero in 2050 as not achievable. I just don't feel that they are in touch with the mood of the country. So if they have learnt lessons, I'm not sure what the lessons are. And I say that without any intention of being unfair to them. I think Jenrick has got more in terms of the pulse of the nation, but he lost and he's lower down somewhere there. If you ask me, I actually don't think Kemi Badenoch will lead the Conservatives into the next election. But that is a story for another day. But if you're interested, please have a look at the policy.conservative.com page and also follow Mr. Jenrick and see for yourself where the Conservative Party is going, because some of you are Conservative supporters. I'm not. Never voted Conservative in my life. I might do at the next general election, depending on where they end up. I might vote Reform, although they're not doing well either at the moment. It's not a time to worry yet. The next general election isn't for another 4 years. We've got time. But I think if you're a Conservative, now is the time to put your efforts into trying to inform and shape what they're talking about and then decide for yourself. And if you're not, such as Belinda here, well then hold them to account. If they've learnt the lessons, and you keep saying that she's learnt lessons, the Conservatives are different, they've learnt lessons. Well, what are the lessons they've learnt? Because if they had learnt lessons, and if I was them, I would be talking about two-tier justice system. I'd be talking about immigration. I'd be talking about the benefits bill and how disproportionately it's favouring those who never worked to live in this country, who belong to this country. It's favouring those who don't even, belong in this country. They come here as foreign nationals and they're claiming benefits. But they won't touch any of these issues so far. Why? I'd imagine it's because they fear of being called racist. But let's see what comes back from this. I'll keep you updated on the themes that come out from the Conservatives as they come out, and let's see where it takes us. And I think that's it. That's all I wanted to share. We'll be back next week. Again, we'll watch Prime Minister's questions along, and when you come back next week, maybe comment or ask some questions on the questions that are being raised, and we'll make it more interactive. I'll see you all later.